Number 10 has confirmed ministers are considering introducing digital ID as part of their efforts to crack down on small boat crossings.
Well, the government has previously steered clear of digital ID cards as a way to deter channel crossings, despite repeated calls from senior figures such as the Labour former Prime Minister Sir Tony Blair.
However, they have acquiesced with the Chancellor of the Duchy of Lancaster, Pat McFadden, saying the UK is behind the curve on the rollout of ID cards.
Well, to debate this, we're joined by the founding member of the Together Declaration, Adam Brooks, and the former Labour Minister, Shaun Woodward. Shaun, I'm going to start with you. We've had this idea about ID cards rumble around for decades. The fact of the matter is, there are easy ways to deal with our border crisis. We just need to take those choices. We don't need to jump towards digital ID, surely.
I've felt for the last 15 or 16 years that moving forwards on digital ID cards is a very sensible thing to do, not only to deal with problems of illegal migration, but actually to establish who we are. Because at the moment, what's happening is the private sector has all kinds of ways of allowing you to present yourself as an identity. And many of these are not safe. And so I think on every single front, from dealing with fraud, from dealing with illegal migration, from dealing with streamlining government services, introducing ID cards is a sensible thing to do. And if we think in the last 10 years of how people compromise their identity every single day with things like mobile phones, it's actually something most people are already doing. And I think the arguments that people very validly perhaps had 10 years ago, most of these have now gone. And if we recognize that in the European Economic Area, 25 of the 31 countries already have some kind of digital ID, we're simply joining with everybody else in the modern age.
But Shaun, their problem of small boats and crossings and influx of migrants hasn't changed. In fact, you could argue that in the Schengen area, it's even worse. So I'm not sure. It sounds to me like a sneaky way of getting in ID cards through the back door. Adam Brooks, what do you think?
I don't think it's about getting anything in through the back door, but let's take the issue of illegal migration. And as I say, for me, it's not the reason you introduce it, but how would it help with illegal migration? Well, the first thing it would do.
Adam.
Well, let me give you.
All right, but you just because I did ask that to Adam, actually.
It will make it very difficult for people to access either welfare or benefits if they don't have a digital ID card. It would make it impossible for them to be employed in a black economy if it was illegal for somebody to actually be employed without a digital ID card.
Okay,
and if you actually remove people's capacity to work or draw benefits because of the cards, why would people want in the same numbers to come here?
All right, well, is dependent on whether that is the pull. Adam Brooks.
Look, we see the authoritarian creep during COVID, Nana. If it wasn't for myself, Alan Miller, and the Together Declaration, we would have had to have been showing QR codes just to go and have a pint down the local pub or to go into a shop, etc. We fought that off because it was against our civil liberties and it wasn't backed up by any evidence. Now, again, at the Together Declaration, we're fighting back against digital IDs as well. Because, look, the fix for illegal immigration is not digital ID. It will make absolutely no difference. As you say, Europe have got the same problems. What we need to do is stop the benefits. We need to detain and deport these illegal immigrants, and that will send a signal to the world that you do not come here and you do not get the life of Riley on the UK taxpayer. At the end of the day, a digital ID will put us all in a digital prison. So we've seen it in places like China. You know, I'm very outspoken on GB News and online. What happens if I criticise Starmer and the government decide to put a block? Let's say a digital ID is linked to my social media. Put a block on that. Or they don't want me to go to a protest. I'm going to a protest tomorrow at the Bell Hotel in Epping. It was my videos that sent this around the country and around the world. What happens if they want to stop me getting on a train? If your digital ID is linked to your payment system or to some big network, they can stop me travelling. They can cut off my freedoms. If someone is on benefits and let's just say they've got a parking fine they haven't paid or so, the government would be able to maybe stop the benefits. We've seen this sort of authoritarian creep in countries like China. Thank God we've got people like Elon Musk, because I would have been taken off of X, formerly Twitter, probably 2 years ago if it wasn't for Elon Musk. He allows me to give my opinions. If we had a digital ID, I honestly believe I would be taken off these sort of platforms, and I would lose my right to free speech.
Right. Well, Shaun, you've heard Adam say there that the risk isn't. You say that private companies already have all this information and access, and we compromise our IDs every day. The difference is, as Adam is pointing out, is that those private companies don't have the powers of the state to use that information to secure their own ambitions, be they authoritarian in some cases. What do you make of that concern?
Well, they have the cards, for example, in Australia, in Italy. And of course, I'm sure that there are people like Adam who've had those worries in those countries. And they may be very legitimate worries in some cases, but that doesn't mean to say that we shouldn't ultimately decide that it's in the interests of the majority to provide better protection against fraud, make it more effective in our streamlining of services to actually deliver them through digital services. And we have to address Adam's worries. If people are worried about their liberty being compromised, then it would be the responsibility of the government to provide adequate safeguards. And I'm sure Adam would say, well, I don't trust the government, and in which case we're still going to have to deal with those concerns. But that isn't a reason, I think, any longer to say that we shouldn't do this.
What about the online safety bill? Sorry, what about the online safety bill, which would eradicate things like end-to-end encryption? So therefore, you couldn't really send anything secretively or whatever. You couldn't do that anymore. So there are now laws that will expose you. And if it's easy to access everything that you're doing, isn't that a worry? I mean, even though I'm not doing anything bad, I don't want people to be able to access all my photos on my iPhone and link that to me and everything else like that, Adam.
Look, Nina, during COVID, I found out via Freedom of Information request that there were secret government agencies that were looking into me because I was fighting back against COVID restrictions. That took Big Brother Watch, a human rights group, to tell me that my rights, really, to privacy were being infringed and I was being looked into. So let's not pretend that a government does not look into its citizens. We need a digital bill of rights, really, to protect us online. So if someone wants to do surveillance on me, they have to go and get a warrant or such. We cannot just be snooped on by a government, or the governments have control via digital ID in our lives. Because as I say, in China, you can be stopped traveling on a train if you're in trouble with that government. Do we really want to go down this North Korea-China line? There's no need for digital IDs at all. And people will find ways around it.
OK, Adam Brooks and the former Labour Minister, Shaun Woodward, thank you very much for your time.